Like a memory brought from a past unknown, Crow Country disguises itself as a product of old, despite easily surpassing the classics with its focused and high-quality production, showcasing an unexpected expertise in a genre where even high-budget projects have failed. Explore this diorama world of horror as you follow Mara Forrest on her investigation, leading into an infamous abandoned amusement park, driven by a curious mixture of hope and dread. Maybe everything will be okay. And maybe it won't. Imagine if Silent Hill 3 was limited to the amusement park, and it was all rendered as if the backgrounds in Final Fantasy VII were in full 3D. As a principle, I don't particularly enjoy discussing a subject directly off comparisons, as it causes the effect of imposing expectations that might not be the most suitable. Unfortunately, I am aware that this is the easiest way to draw interest, so allow me this initial, crude example as an enticing hook into my thoughts about Crow Country. If the initial synopsis wasn't clear enough, if you like what you've seen and heard so far, do try it out for yourself. I personally love the game and I can easily recommend it to those who enjoy survival horror or anyone who wants to try getting into the genre. If you need further convincing or just want to watch further out of curiosity, then please be my guest. I do appreciate the sentiment. The stage of Crow Country is set in the ever-distant past of 1990, as you follow Special Agent Mara Forrest in her search for Edward Crow, the owner of the titular amusement park that recently closed down after a certain accident. As for the game itself, it's the usual survival horror antics. Shit is already rusty and doors are locked, so you ping-pong across the place, solving your way through this charming horror diorama with some fun puzzle solving along the way. Of course, the current residents aren't too happy about your sudden visit, and guns have to be fired. Despite the camera being fixed to a locked angle, you can pivot it around independently of your aiming, which not only requires to be adjusted horizontally, but also vertically, providing some interesting depth to the interaction with the surrounding environment. Couple this with the frantic motions of the enemies, and how bullets do more damage the closer you are to the target, and you got a pretty decent high-risk, high-reward system in place. While all of this might lead you to believe that the game is catering to the hardcore survival horror fans, Crow Country goes far and beyond in terms of accessibility in a variety of levels. As expected, the classic horror tank controls are available to those who so desire them, quick turn included and all. But for those who want a more action-oriented approach, you can also control Mara with an instant 360 degree of motion, with both of the options surprisingly available at all times by simply switching between the D-pad and the analog stick, without the need to pause to adjust the options. Still on that topic, with a surprising design choice, instead of the usual standard difficulty selection, Crow Country offers a choice between the original survival horror mode and an exploration mode, where all the enemies are removed. While this absolves you of any immediate danger, jump scares are still out and about, and with a good spacing in between them, it is certain that one will eventually get you. Keeping up with the survival part, you must carefully explore your surroundings and scavenge for any resources you might find, and one thing I greatly appreciate is how points of interest are preceded by a light description, so you instantly know that you can interact with them, instead of being forced to mash buttons while drifting to every corner in hopes of finding the next piece of the puzzle. Besides certain fixed items, most of the resources are randomly placed, so you can't just memorize where all the good stuff is for future playthroughs, but at least things like puzzle codes are always the same. It is pretty funny how you can sometimes get trash while rummaging through the trash cans, and it's that special attention to detail that ultimately elevates the quality of the game and keeps it there throughout the entire experience. Things like how Mara turns the notes and documents to face her so that she can read them, or how she interacts with certain points of interest instead of just having a text box explaining what is happening. Oh, and later on you have to play a quiz, and the questions are built around information that only makes sense because the game happens during the 90s. Honestly, that put a smile on my face. Going back to the previous point, it's important to consider that accessibility is a double-edged sword. By having so many outs for those who can't be bothered with a challenge, you might turn off players whose sole interest might be in the difficulty often associated with the genre. In this case, Crow Country has to be one of the easiest survival horror games I have ever played, as the number of resources you can stock up is more than enough to kill everything in your path. And even if you somehow run completely out of ammo, you can walk all the way back to the beginning, where you can always grab some free bullets from the trunk of your car. But this is mostly necessary, as there are puzzles where you have to shoot your way to progress, and there isn't any type of melee attack to break containers. Well, at least initially. It's a commendable effort on trying to balance resources by having you spend bullets in exchange of a possible bigger reward, or even to make the path easier by disarming the traps that are scattered around. If your worries are more to the puzzle side, there are also these fortune teller machines placed across the park that can offer a more direct hint on where to go next, but they have limited uses per playthrough. Even if you are still having problems after all of this, the game is still pretty forgiving. Case in point, one of the notes you can find near the end just literally tells you the order in which you must use all of the key items to progress, which I never seen a game do before, at least not so directly. Even if you might be disappointed by the lack of a challenge, I still recommend you to play it, as the complete experience is definitely worth the time. All the areas are especially distinct, and each environment is chock full of detail, making the world seem truly lived in, and worth of pausing to carefully observe each room just to soak in the atmosphere. The art style is not only charming, but it works as a perfect contrast to the horrors growing ever present as you explore further. Reiterating on my original starting comment, Crow Country really managed to pull the same style of 3D that Final Fantasy VII specifically used for its backgrounds, and finally made it fully 3D, and to my knowledge, it's the only one who ever did that. On the other hand, I can see how the heavy use of filters to simulate the media of the time might turn off some people that are more particular about the visual aspect of their retro-inspired media, and unfortunately, you cannot turn any of that off. You can't adjust the brightness either, because the game really wants to be pitch black at certain points to force you to use the flashlight, which is a strong stance to take regarding their artistic vision. I do like the entire aesthetic that is built around it, and despite liking every other aspect of the game, I think the visuals have to be my favorite part. The use of perspective and framing is nothing short of fantastic, elevating the horror by not forcing the momentum to its set pieces, but instead letting the player naturally wander towards them by their own pace. While I am purposely circumventing the story from any deeper detail, I should at least mention of how great it is. Understanding that the core to horror has always been the fear of the unknown, and applying that throughout all the facets of the game, even nailing the ending with a satisfying yet ominous note that many in the genre often fail to accomplish, in favor of a brighter conclusion, like horror is something you can just shoot away and everything is resolved. As for the protagonist, while Mara certainly has a lot of Heather Mason in her, I can also see a bit of Aya Bree, as they both mix into this naive kid with a snarky attitude and a bit of a rough edge, which is further explored as she uncovers the secrets of the park. The entire supporting cast is also very interesting, and a great way to give further depth to the protagonist by having her interact with these people trying to deal with their own problems, while mostly keeping it light-hearted as a way to relax from the constant isolation of the game. This quality to the setting is felt even down to the characters whose presence can only be seen by the leftover traces of their own existence, greatly contributing to a coherent world, where parts that don't even appear to have any sort of connection happen to have a logical reason for existing. One of the better examples is how you get one of the laser sights for a weapon and why it even exists in the first place. And if you pay enough attention, you'll be able to connect it to another puzzle that upgrades your health kits. With this, I believe I made my point in favor of Crow Country, and if there is something to take out from all of this, is that you should definitely play it. It's not every day we get an original game this good, and it would be a shame for people to miss out on it. It's honestly impressive how the tech team behind Crow Country are the same folk who developed Snipper Clips. These are not their only games, but it's really interesting how they managed to create such contrasting work and still come out swinging this hard. You know what? I am going to say it, even if it barely makes any sense. Crow Country is better than Silent Hill 3. Understand that they are both great games on their own, and while Silent Hill 3 has several incredible standout moments, both in the gameplay and the story, it's also filled with average segments, which always put me off from the idea of replaying it. The starting hour is fantastic, but then there's the subway, the construction site, the office. As for Crow Country, most of my complaints are more on the technical side, at least on the PC version, which I was gracefully given a review code for. Things like not being able to change the resolution or any graphical setting at all, or how some of the area transitions take a few seconds too long, but that only got more noticeable on my second run, when I was just staring through the park like a mad lad. While I played using a controller, I did try with keyboard and mouse, but the game certainly has some interesting key bindings, and you can't change any of them besides 2 preset options. Only having 3 save slots is also pretty crazy. For some reason, the grenade button is mapped to the same button as the flashlight, but only when you're aiming, so while hilarious in retrospective, I actually never threw a grenade intentionally. Again, these are all technical, so maybe when you're watching this in the future, these are all already fixed. Similar things have happened before to every other modern game I reviewed, to the point where even Signalis eventually added the option for additional inventory space, which is crazy to think about. If I was forced to point out any bad design choice, I would say that the lack of the usual memo option to review previous acquired notes is definitely weird, with the note collection being only present in one of the books that always accompanies the save points. It's not like this is really needed in active puzzle solving, because they're all pretty self-contained to their own locations. Well, there was the slide projector puzzle where I was forced to jolt down multiple numbers, but the way the information was displayed wouldn't make the memo option any easier. As expected from the genre, you are rated by your performance at the end of the playthrough, and you can get some neat bonuses if you do particularly well, which then can be activated for all playthroughs in your save file. At the same time, you unlock Crow Quest, where 42 crystal crows will be hidden throughout the map, and if you destroy them all, you get a pretty devilish gift. I was glad to have incentives to go right back for a second run. Honestly, I hope that they never make a sequel for this. It's not like I don't believe they can pull it off, but the ending is wrapped up so nicely that I would rather they try their hand at a different project, even if they just reuse the core gameplay of Crow Country. Nevertheless, whatever they release next, I shall be patiently waiting.